"Get your hands off that rifle, lady. This isn't a toy store." The harsh voice cut through the morning air at Thunder Ridge Military Base as Staff Sergeant Mitchell yanked the M24 sniper rifle from the small woman's hands, his weathered face twisted with disgust. The outdoor firing range fell silent except for the distant echo of gunfire from the advanced training courses. Samantha Reynolds, barely 5 feet tall with auburn hair, pulled back in a simple ponytail, didn't resist as the massive man towered over her, his chest puffed with authority. "This is precision equipment worth more than your car, sweetheart. Go play with the 22s where you belong." But before Samantha could respond, before the gathered crowd of weekend civilian shooters could process what was happening, Range Master Colonel Davidson's voice boomed across the facility like thunder. "Mitchell, put that weapon down immediately. That woman holds the base record, 2,147 yards, confirmed kill shot. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." The rifle slipped from Mitchell's suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering onto the concrete shooting platform. 24 recreational shooters, military personnel, and civilian enthusiasts who had been watching the confrontation with amused interest suddenly found their expressions frozen in shock. The woman they had been dismissing as just another suburban mom trying to play soldier was apparently something else entirely. Someone in the crowd whispered 2847 yards in disbelief, a distance that most professional snipers could only dream of achieving. Colonel Davidson was already striding across the range, his face grim, his military bearing evident in every step. Behind him, 3 senior drill instructors followed, their expressions shifting from confusion to recognition to something approaching reverence. Samantha Reynolds stood motionless in the center of the chaos, her hands now empty but steady. She wore simple civilian clothes, faded jeans, a plain gray t-shirt, worn sneakers that had seen better days. Nothing about her appearance suggested military training, elite marksmanship, or the kind of expertise that sets world records. Her gentle face carried the tired expression of someone who worked long hours in an ordinary job, the kind of person you might see grocery shopping or picking up kids from school without giving a second thought. She had arrived at Thunder Ridge that morning like dozens of other weekend recreational shooters, signing in at the civilian desk, paying her range fees with crumpled $20 bills, carrying a modest gun case that could have belonged to any amateur enthusiast. But Staff Sergeant Mitchell had spotted her immediately, his predatory instincts honed by 15 years of military service detecting what he perceived as easy prey. He had watched her approach the long-range precision shooting station, the most challenging and expensive section of the range, reserved for serious marksmen and military professionals. When she began setting up equipment with quiet efficiency, Mitchell had appointed himself the unofficial guardian of military standards. "Ma'am, you sure you're in the right place?" he had asked with condescending concern. "The beginner courses are over by the main building. This section requires advanced certification." Samantha had looked up briefly, her brown eyes meeting his with a calm expression that should have warned him off. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she had replied softly, her voice carrying no challenge, no defiance, just quiet certainty. That simple response had triggered something in Mitchell's masculine pride. Here was a woman, probably some accountant or teacher, thinking she could waltz into the most demanding section of a military base and compete with trained professionals. He had loudly announced to everyone within earshot, "Look what we got here, folks. Another civilian thinks she's going to show us how it's done." The gathered crowd had chuckled, some shaking their heads with amused sympathy for the woman who clearly didn't understand what she was attempting. Mitchell had positioned himself as the voice of reason, explaining loudly how precision shooting required years of training, how military-grade equipment wasn't designed for recreational users, how the advanced range was reserved for serious marksmen with documented qualifications. The confrontation had escalated when Samantha continued her setup, ignoring Mitchell's increasingly aggressive suggestions that she relocate to a more appropriate area. She adjusted her scope with practiced movements, checked her ammunition with the systematic thoroughness of someone following ingrained protocols, positioned herself with subtle precision that escaped notice from everyone except the few genuine experts observing from a distance. Mitchell's frustration had boiled over when she actually chambered around, preparing to take her first shot. "This is insane," he had shouted, grabbing for her weapon. "You're going to hurt yourself or someone else." That was the moment when his hands closed around the rifle barrel, when he physically removed the weapon from her possession, when his voice carried across the entire range facility, declaring her unfit for serious marksmanship. And that was the moment when Range Master Colonel Davidson's voice had cut through the morning air like a blade, stopping every conversation, freezing every movement, transforming ridicule into stunned silence with 5 words that changed everything. "She holds the base record." Now Mitchell stood paralyzed, his face cycling through confusion, embarrassment, and growing dread as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. The woman he had just humiliated in front of 24 witnesses wasn't some suburban amateur playing with military equipment. She was apparently a marksmanship legend whose achievements exceeded anything he had accomplished in his entire career. As Colonel Davidson approached with his escort of senior personnel, as whispers of 2847 yards began rippling through the crowd, as cell phone cameras started appearing to document what was clearly becoming an extraordinary moment, Samantha Reynolds remained perfectly still in the center of the storm. Her expression hadn't changed, the same calm, tired look of someone who had dealt with this kind of dismissal before, someone who had learned to expect underestimation, someone who carried capabilities that defied every assumption people made about her based on her appearance. The rifle lay between them on the concrete, and everyone present somehow understood that they were about to witness something that would fundamentally change how they viewed the quiet woman who had walked onto their range that morning carrying secrets that could stop conversations and shatter preconceptions with a single impossible number: 2,847 yards. Samantha Reynolds, 34 years old, had the kind of face that disappeared in crowds. Soft features, gentle brown eyes, and shoulder-length auburn hair that she usually kept pulled back in a practical ponytail. Standing barely 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighing maybe 115 pounds soaking wet, she possessed the unremarkable appearance of someone who could blend into any suburban setting without drawing a second glance. Her hands were small and delicate, the kind you might expect to see arranging flowers or typing at a computer, not gripping military-grade weaponry with deadly precision. When she smiled, which happened often during her workday, it was the patient, understanding expression of someone accustomed to being helpful rather than commanding attention. For the past 6 years, Samantha had worked as a medical record clerk at Pine Valley General Hospital, a mid-sized facility serving the communities surrounding Thunder Ridge Military Base. She occupied a small cubicle in the basement administrative offices, surrounded by filing cabinets and computer terminals, processing insurance claims, and organizing patient documentation with quiet efficiency. Her colleagues knew her as the reliable one, always willing to cover extra shifts, never complaining about difficult assignments, arriving early and staying late when deadlines demanded extra hours. She drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a dented rear bumper, packed simple lunches in brown paper bags, and wore the same rotation of modest blouses and slacks that suggested someone living comfortably but without extravagance. During lunch breaks, Samantha usually ate alone in the hospital cafeteria, reading paperback novels or working crossword puzzles while other employees gathered in social clusters to discuss weekend plans or family drama. She participated in office conversations when directly included, offering polite comments about weather or current events, but never dominated discussions or drew attention to herself. Her supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, often praised her consistency and attention to detail in performance reviews, noting that Samantha Reynolds was exactly the kind of dependable employee who kept the administrative machinery running smoothly. Steady as a rock, Patterson would tell other department heads. Never any drama, never any problems, just solid work every single day. Samantha's apartment reflected the same understated simplicity as her professional life. A modest two-bedroom unit in a quiet complex 15 minutes from the hospital, furnished with practical pieces from discount stores and garage sales. Her living room featured a comfortable but worn sofa, a small television, and bookcases filled with mystery novels and medical journals that she read to stay current with healthcare terminology. The second bedroom served as her home office, containing a desk where she sometimes brought work home and a computer where she managed her personal finances with the same methodical precision she applied to patient records. Neighbors occasionally saw her tending a small garden on her balcony, growing herbs and tomatoes with careful attention to watering schedules and fertilizer applications. Her social life consisted mainly of occasional dinners with Rachel Morrison, a fellow records clerk who had started at the hospital around the same time. Rachel often invited Samantha to join larger group activities, birthday parties, holiday gatherings, weekend trips to nearby cities. But Samantha typically declined with polite excuses about being tired or having other commitments. She attended mandatory office functions like Christmas parties and retirement celebrations, arriving promptly and leaving early after making appropriate social contributions, without seeming rude or antisocial. Most co-workers considered her friendly but private, the kind of person who was pleasant to work with but didn't share much about her personal life. On weekends, Samantha maintained routines that reinforced her image as someone leading a quietly ordinary existence. Saturday mornings involved grocery shopping at the same supermarket, following the same route through the aisles, purchasing practical items like frozen dinners and generic brands that stretched her budget without sacrificing nutrition. She attended a small Methodist church where she sat in the back pew, participated in hymn singing, and contributed modest amounts to collection plates without volunteering for committees or leadership roles. Sunday afternoons often found her at the public library, checking out books or using the computers to research topics that seemed consistent with someone seeking general knowledge rather than specialized information. Her only notable recreational activity appeared to be an interest in outdoor activities, hiking, camping, and what she described to curious colleagues as target shooting. When pressed for details, Samantha would explain that she enjoyed the precision and focus required for marksmanship, comparing it to meditation or other stress relief activities. She mentioned belonging to a civilian shooting club, participating in weekend competitions that involved basic rifle and pistol categories. Rachel had once asked to join her for a shooting session, but Samantha had gently deflected the invitation, suggesting that Rachel might find the sport boring since it involved long periods of concentration and repetitive practice. Hospital security guards sometimes saw Samantha arriving for early shifts, carrying what appeared to be a gun case. But since many employees in the region owned firearms for hunting or recreation, nobody considered this unusual or noteworthy. Her background check for employment had revealed no criminal history, No military service, and no specialized training that would distinguish her from thousands of other administrative workers throughout the area. Personnel files listed her previous employment as various clerical positions at insurance companies and medical offices, creating a career trajectory that suggested someone who had found her niche in healthcare administration and planned to remain there until retirement. The transformation that occurred at Thunder Ridge Military Base shooting ranges on weekend mornings seemed completely disconnected from the quiet woman who processed medical paperwork during the week. Nobody at Pine Valley General Hospital would have believed that their reliable records clerk possessed capabilities that could silence experienced military personnel or command respect from senior officers. In their minds, Samantha Reynolds was simply the helpful woman in Cubicle 7B who never missed deadlines and never caused problems. Exactly the kind of invisible employee who kept institutions functioning while remaining completely unremarkable in every way that mattered. The Thunder Ridge Military Base shooting facility sprawled across 47 acres of Colorado high desert, featuring everything from basic pistol ranges to advanced long-distance precision courses that challenged even the most experienced military snipers. Weekend civilian access was limited to specific sections, but those areas still included some of the most sophisticated shooting infrastructure available to the general public. The facility served dual purposes, generating revenue through civilian programs while providing realistic training environments for active duty personnel from Fort Carson-Peterson Air Force Base and the Colorado National Guard. On this particular Saturday morning in late September, the crisp mountain air carried the sharp crack of gunfire from multiple ranges as both military personnel and civilian enthusiasts pursued their respective training goals. The long-range precision shooting course, where Samantha had positioned herself, represented the crown jewel of Thunder Ridge's civilian offerings. Stretching nearly 3,000 yards across rolling terrain that simulated real-world combat environments, the course featured targets at distances ranging from 500 to 2,800 yards. Each shooting position was equipped with adjustable rests, wind measurement devices, and spotting scopes powerful enough to identify hits at maximum range. The course record board, prominently displayed near the registration desk, listed the top 10 shots ever recorded on the facility. A mixture of military snipers, competitive shooters, and a few exceptional civilians whose achievements had earned permanent recognition. Range safety protocols required all shooters attempting distances beyond 1,000 yards to demonstrate previous experience and sign additional liability waivers. The equipment standards were correspondingly strict. Only rifles chambered in specific calibers were permitted. Scopes had to meet minimum magnification requirements, and ammunition was subject to inspection for consistency and quality. These restrictions meant that the long-range course typically hosted no more than 8 to 12 shooters on busy days, creating an atmosphere of serious concentration quite different from the more casual recreational shooting areas elsewhere on the base. Staff Sergeant Mitchell had been assigned range safety duty for the precision course as part of his weekend reserve obligations. A 15-year Army veteran with tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, Mitchell prided himself on maintaining professional standards while helping civilian shooters understand the complexities of long-range marksmanship. His service record included completion of basic sniper training, though he had never qualified for advanced courses or achieved the elite designations carried by true precision specialists. Nevertheless, his experience exceeded that of most civilian shooters, and he had developed a reputation for providing helpful guidance while ensuring that safety protocols were strictly observed. The morning had started routinely enough. Dr. James Hartwell, a retired surgeon and competitive shooter, was working methodically through a series of 800-yard shots with a custom-built rifle system that had cost more than most people's cars. 2 active-duty Marines from nearby Camp Pendleton were practicing with their issued M40 sniper rifles, taking advantage of weekend leave to maintain their qualifications. A local police SWAT officer was testing a new scope configuration, documenting group sizes at various distances for his department's equipment evaluation process. Each shooter occupied their designated position with serious focus, understanding that precision marksmanship demanded absolute concentration and respect for the technical challenges involved. The atmosphere had shifted noticeably when Samantha Reynolds arrived and began setting up at Position 7, the most challenging station on the range, designed for attempts at maximum distance targets. Mitchell had initially assumed she was meeting someone, perhaps a husband or boyfriend, who would be handling the actual shooting while she observed. When it became clear that she intended to shoot independently, his protective instincts had activated. The liability implications alone were staggering. If an inexperienced shooter injured herself or others with military-grade equipment, the resulting investigation and potential lawsuits could shut down the civilian program permanently. Mitchell's concerns weren't entirely unreasonable. The precision course had witnessed several serious accidents over the years, including a broken collarbone from improper rifle positioning, hearing damage from inadequate protection, and scope cuts from poor shooting technique. Insurance requirements mandated that range safety officers intervene whenever they observed potentially dangerous situations. And Mitchell had no way of knowing that the small woman preparing to handle a high-powered rifle possessed any relevant experience. Her equipment appeared adequate: a quality rifle case, proper hearing protection, appropriate clothing. But equipment could be borrowed or purchased by anyone regardless of their actual capabilities. The gathering crowd of observers complicated the situation further. Word had spread through the facility that someone was attempting a maximum distance shot, and off-duty personnel from various ranges had wandered over to watch. Precision shooting at extreme ranges provided entertainment value similar to watching a professional golf tournament. Most spectators understood enough about the technical challenges to appreciate exceptional performance, even if they couldn't replicate it themselves. The presence of an audience increased pressure on Mitchell to maintain his authority and ensure that range safety standards weren't compromised by someone seeking attention without possessing legitimate qualifications. Weather conditions that morning presented additional challenges that would have tested even experienced marksmen. Wind speeds were variable, shifting between 8 and 15 miles per hour, with occasional gusts reaching 20. Temperature differential between the shooting position and target area was creating mirage effects that made accurate range estimation extremely difficult. Atmospheric pressure was dropping ahead of an approaching weather front, affecting ballistic calculations in ways that required sophisticated understanding of external ballistics. These conditions would have challenged military snipers with years of training. Expecting a civilian to manage them successfully seemed unrealistic to the point of being dangerous. As tensions escalated and Mitchell's interventions became more aggressive, the assembled crowd found themselves witnessing something unprecedented in their experience. Range confrontations usually involve disputes over scheduling, disagreements about scoring, or arguments over equipment regulations. None of the regular shooters had ever seen a situation where someone's basic right to attempt a shot was being challenged based solely on their appearance and perceived qualifications. The morning that had started as routine practice was rapidly becoming a test of assumptions, prejudices, and the sometimes hidden capabilities that existed within their community. The tension at Position 7 had been building for nearly 20 minutes, as Mitchell's initial polite suggestions evolved into increasingly aggressive demands that Samantha relocate to a more appropriate section of the range. What had started as seemingly helpful guidance, "Ma'am, are you sure you wouldn't be more comfortable at the shorter distances?" had gradually transformed into public humiliation as other shooters paused their own activities to witness the unfolding confrontation. Mitchell's voice grew louder with each exchange, his frustration mounting as Samantha continued her methodical equipment setup while offering only brief, polite responses to his escalating concerns. "Look, lady, I don't know what you think you're trying to prove here, but this isn't some kind of game," Mitchell announced to the gathering crowd, his tone dripping with condescension as he gestured toward Samantha's rifle case. "This is precision equipment designed for military professionals, not soccer moms looking for Instagram photos." Several spectators chuckled at his comment, nodding in agreement with what seemed like reasonable common sense. Dr. Hartwell, the retired surgeon, had initially attempted to mediate the situation by suggesting that everyone deserved an opportunity to learn, but even he was beginning to question whether allowing an obvious novice to attempt maximum distance shots represented responsible range management. The two Marines from Camp Pendleton had positioned themselves where they could observe both the confrontation and Samantha's equipment setup, their professional curiosity piqued by the unusual situation. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the senior Marine, had 15 years of experience, including multiple combat deployments where precision marksmanship meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. He studied Samantha's movements with the analytical eye of someone trained to assess capabilities under pressure, noting subtle details that civilian observers missed entirely. "Something's not right about this whole thing," he murmured to his partner, Lance Corporal Thompson. "Watch how she's handling that scope adjustment. Those aren't beginner movements." Thompson, younger but equally experienced in combat operations, had been thinking the same thing. "Yeah, and look at her breathing pattern while Mitchell's yelling at her. Most civilians would be getting flustered or defensive by now, but she's staying completely calm. That takes training." Both Marines had witnessed enough confrontations during their military careers to recognize the difference between genuine inexperience and something else entirely. Samantha's responses to Mitchell's increasingly hostile challenges displayed a level of emotional control that suggested familiarity with high-stress situations where remaining calm could determine survival outcomes. Mitchell, however, was too invested in his role as protector of range standards to notice these subtle indicators. His military background had taught him to trust his instincts about people's capabilities, and everything about Samantha's appearance screamed civilian amateur to his experienced eye. When she continued adjusting her scope settings despite his explicit instructions to relocate, Mitchell's patience finally evaporated completely. "This is absolutely ridiculous," he shouted, his voice carrying across multiple shooting positions and drawing attention from shooters at adjacent ranges. "I've been doing this for 15 years, and I'm not going to stand here and watch someone get hurt because they're too stubborn to admit they're in over their head." The crowd that had gathered to observe the maximum distance shooting attempt was now primarily focused on the confrontation itself, with several people recording video on their cell phones while others placed informal bets on how the situation would resolve. A few spectators began offering unsolicited advice and commentary that only increased the pressure on both participants. "Just let her try one shot," suggested a local police officer who regularly practiced at Thunder Ridge. "What's the worst that could happen?" But Mitchell's response was immediate and forceful. "The worst that could happen is she breaks her shoulder, damages expensive equipment, or sends a round somewhere it shouldn't go because she doesn't understand ballistics or safety protocols." Dr. Hartwell, despite his earlier attempts at diplomacy, found himself nodding in agreement with Mitchell's position. His own journey to precision shooting competency had required years of training, thousands of dollars in equipment, and countless hours of practice under expert supervision. The idea that someone could simply arrive at a military facility and attempt world-class shots without extensive preparation seemed both dangerous and disrespectful to those who had invested serious effort in developing their skills. "I'm sorry, miss," he called out to Samantha, "but I have to agree with Sergeant Mitchell on this. Long-range shooting requires specialized knowledge that takes years to develop safely." The SWAT officer who had been testing his equipment nodded in support of this assessment. "I've been shooting professionally for 12 years, and I still wouldn't attempt some of the distances available on this range without proper preparation and ideal conditions. There's no shame in working your way up gradually. That's how everyone learns." His comments drew murmurs of agreement from the assembled crowd, creating a consensus that Mitchell's interventions were not only justified, but necessary for everyone's safety and the continued operation of the civilian program. Samantha's responses to this mounting pressure remained consistently calm and professional, which only served to frustrate Mitchell further. When he demanded to see her certification documents, she quietly explained that civilian shooters weren't required to provide credentials beyond basic safety acknowledgments. When he questioned her understanding of ballistic calculations, she offered brief technical responses that demonstrated familiarity with relevant concepts without providing detailed explanations. Her refusal to be intimidated or backed down appeared to Mitchell and most observers as dangerous stubbornness rather than confidence based on hidden expertise. The situation reached its climax when Mitchell physically positioned himself between Samantha and her rifle, declaring loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I'm not going to be responsible for explaining to investigators why I allowed an unqualified civilian to attempt shots that challenge experienced military personnel. This ends right now." The crowd fell silent, understanding that they were witnessing a moment of absolute confrontation where someone's authority would be definitively established. Mitchell's hand moved toward the rifle barrel as he prepared to physically remove the weapon from Samantha's possession, his face set with the determination of someone absolutely convinced that he was preventing a disaster through decisive action. As his fingers closed around the rifle stock and he began lifting the weapon away from Samantha's position, the morning air suddenly filled with a voice that would transform everything everyone thought they understood about the quiet woman who had caused such an unprecedented disruption at Thunder Ridge Military Base. The moment Mitchell's hands made contact with her rifle, something fundamental shifted in Samantha's demeanor that was so subtle most observers missed it entirely, but profound enough that the two Marines immediately straightened to attention. Her breathing pattern, which had remained steady throughout the confrontation, changed to the controlled respiratory rhythm that military snipers learn during advanced training. 4 seconds in, hold for 4, 4 seconds out, hold for 4. Her stance, previously relaxed and non-threatening, adjusted by mere inches into a modified shooting position that optimized her center of gravity and provided maximum stability for precision work. Most telling of all, her hands moved with unconscious muscle memory to check her equipment configuration, fingers automatically verifying scope settings and ammunition placement with the fluid efficiency of someone who had performed these same actions thousands of times under conditions where mistakes carried lethal consequences. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up as he watched these micro-adjustments. During his 3 combat deployments, he had worked alongside some of the most elite snipers in the Marine Corps, and he recognized the subtle physical indicators that separated genuine professionals from weekend warriors. "Thompson," he whispered urgently to his partner, "we need to pay very close attention to what happens next." I'm starting to think we've been watching a master class in self-control rather than civilian stubbornness. Lance Corporal Thompson nodded, his own combat experience providing similar recognition signals that something extraordinary was developing in front of them. Dr. Hartwell, despite his years of competitive shooting experience, found himself studying Samantha's movements with growing confusion. Her handling of the scope adjustment mechanisms displayed familiarity with equipment specifications that typically required extensive technical training to master. When she made minute corrections to her cheek weld position, the movements were precise and purposeful, rather than the tentative adjustments expected from someone learning proper technique. Most puzzling of all, her eyes maintained the 1,000-yard stare that experienced marksmen developed after countless hours of long-distance shooting, a specific focal pattern that couldn't be faked or learned from books. Mitchell, however, remained completely focused on his perceived duty to prevent disaster and missed these subtle indicators entirely. His military training had taught him to assess threats and capabilities quickly, but his assumptions about civilian limitations were preventing him from recognizing evidence that contradicted his initial assessment. As he attempted to lift the rifle away from Samantha's position, he encountered unexpected resistance, not the desperate grabbing of someone trying to hold on to a toy, but the controlled, measured response of someone who understood exactly how to maintain weapon security without escalating physical confrontation. "Sir, I need you to release my equipment immediately," Samantha said quietly, her voice carrying a tone of authority that seemed to emerge from nowhere. The change was so dramatic that several spectators looked around to see if someone else had spoken. Gone was the soft-spoken, apologetic demeanor of the medical records clerk, who had been patiently enduring 20 minutes of public humiliation. In its place was the calm, commanding presence of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Mitchell found himself automatically loosening his grip on the rifle before consciously reasserting his authority and tightening his hold on the weapon. The technical aspects of Samantha's equipment setup, which had been overlooked during the confrontation, began drawing attention from knowledgeable observers as the standoff continued. Her rifle was a custom-built precision instrument worth more than most people's annual salaries, featuring a barrel manufactured to tolerances measured in thousandths of inches and a trigger system adjusted to break at exactly 2 pounds of pressure. The scope mounted on the rifle was military-grade equipment typically restricted to government purchases, suggesting either extensive financial resources or access to specialized suppliers. Most importantly, the ammunition she had selected represented the cutting edge of long-range ballistics technology, match-grade cartridges with ballistic coefficients optimized for extreme distance shooting. Lance Corporal Thompson moved closer to examine the technical details of Samantha's setup, his curiosity overcoming range etiquette about inspecting other shooters' equipment without permission. What he discovered made him immediately signal Rodriguez to join him. "Sergeant, you need to see this," he whispered, pointing to the data card attached to Samantha's scope. The card contained ballistic calculations for distances extending beyond 3,000 yards, with atmospheric corrections computed to decimal places that indicated familiarity with advanced ballistics software. More significantly, the calculations included variables for Coriolis effect and gyroscopic drift, factors that only mattered for extreme long-range shots and were typically known only to military snipers and world-class competitive marksmen. The ammunition selection provided additional evidence that challenged assumptions about Samantha's experience level. She had chosen a 338 Lapua Magnum cartridge, specifically designed for extreme long-range applications, loaded with match-grade bullets that cost nearly $5 each. The box of ammunition showed meticulous organization, with each cartridge numbered and matched to specific atmospheric conditions. This level of preparation suggested someone who understood that long-range precision shooting required scientific precision rather than casual hobby shooting. Most civilian shooters attempting their first long-distance shots would have selected less expensive, more forgiving ammunition that provided adequate accuracy without demanding perfect technique. Dr. Hartwell, observing these technical details with his own competitive shooting background, began questioning his earlier assessment of the situation. His experience with precision shooting equipment told him that Samantha's rifle configuration represented months or years of careful optimization rather than a recent purchase by someone seeking immediate gratification. The scope settings indicated familiarity with ballistic calculations that required extensive training to master. Most puzzling, her ammunition selection suggested someone who regularly shot at distances that challenged even experienced military snipers, not the casual recreational shooting that would justify less sophisticated equipment choices. As tension mounted and Mitchell maintained his grip on the rifle while demanding that Samantha abandon her shooting attempt, other range personnel began taking notice of the unusual confrontation. Range Master Colonel Davidson, who had been conducting safety inspections at the pistol ranges, received radio notification that a situation requiring his attention was developing at the precision course. Two range safety officers from adjacent facilities began walking toward Position 7, their training alerting them that prolonged confrontations between range personnel and civilian shooters could escalate into serious incidents requiring official intervention and incident reports. The assembled crowd, initially entertained by what seemed like routine enforcement of safety protocols, was beginning to sense that something extraordinary was developing beyond their understanding. Cell phone cameras continued recording, but the casual amusement that had characterized early observations was being replaced by genuine curiosity about how the standoff would resolve. The technical sophistication of Samantha's equipment, combined with her unexpected displays of authority and expertise, was creating cognitive dissonance between their assumptions about her capabilities and the evidence presented by her actions and preparations. As Colonel Davidson approached the precision course with his escort of range safety personnel, the morning that had started with routine recreational shooting was rapidly becoming something unprecedented in Thunder Ridge's operational history. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The standoff at Position 7 had reached a critical impasse when the distinctive sound of military boots on concrete announced the arrival of Range Master Colonel Davidson and his escort of senior personnel. The crowd instinctively parted to create a pathway, recognizing the authority represented by Davidson's bearing and the urgency suggested by his rapid approach. Mitchell, still gripping Samantha's rifle, felt a mixture of relief and vindication. Finally, someone with genuine authority would resolve this situation and confirm that his interventions had been necessary to prevent a serious incident. He straightened to attention as Davidson approached, preparing to provide a concise briefing on the civilian safety violation he had prevented through decisive action. Colonel Davidson's initial assessment of the situation appeared to confirm Mitchell's expectations. The range master's experienced eye took in the scene systematically, a visibly agitated staff sergeant maintaining physical control of a civilian's weapon, a small woman standing calmly despite being prevented from accessing her equipment, and a crowd of spectators documenting the confrontation with obvious interest in its resolution. Davidson had dealt with similar situations throughout his 23-year military career, understanding that range safety required firm enforcement of protocols even when civilian feelings might be hurt in the process. His preliminary assumption was that Mitchell had appropriately intervened to prevent an unqualified shooter from attempting dangerous shots beyond their capabilities. Staff Sergeant Mitchell, report, Davidson commanded in the crisp tone that had managed countless operational briefings during his service career. Mitchell immediately launched into his explanation of events, describing how an obviously inexperienced civilian had attempted to access the most challenging section of the range without demonstrating appropriate qualifications. His account emphasized the safety risks, the potential liability issues, and his professional assessment that allowing the shooting attempt would have violated every reasonable standard of range management. Davidson nodded as Mitchell spoke, his expression suggesting agreement with the general principles of safety enforcement, even as his eyes continued studying details of the situation that didn't align perfectly with Mitchell's narrative. The technical sophistication of Samantha's equipment setup caught Davidson's attention immediately, just as it had impressed the observing Marines and Dr. Hartwell. His decades of experience with precision shooting systems allowed him to recognize the quality and specifications of her rifle configuration at a glance. The custom barrel work, the military-grade optics, the advanced ammunition selection, these components represented investment and expertise that contradicted Mitchell's assessment of civilian inexperience. More significantly, the ballistic calculation card attached to her scope contained mathematical formulations that Davidson recognized from advanced sniper training courses, computations that required specialized knowledge typically possessed only by elite military marksmen. Master Sergeant Williams, Davidson's senior enlisted advisor who had accompanied him from the main office, was conducting his own assessment of the situation with the analytical skills developed during 2 decades of training precision shooters. Williams had worked with hundreds of civilian marksmen during his tenure at Thunder Ridge, developing an ability to distinguish between genuine expertise and expensive equipment purchases by wealthy amateurs. His evaluation of Samantha's setup indicated someone who understood advanced ballistics theory and had configured her equipment for maximum precision shooting. The ammunition selection particularly impressed him. 138 Lapua Magnum cartridges with match-grade bullets that suggested regular shooting at distances exceeding 2,000 yards. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, Davidson's executive officer, focused his attention on the human dynamics of the confrontation rather than technical equipment details. His background in military personnel management provided insight into body language and stress responses that revealed important information about the participants' actual capabilities and experience levels. Mitchell's agitation and defensive posturing indicated someone operating outside his comfort zone despite his claimed expertise in range safety management. Samantha's calm demeanor and controlled responses suggested someone accustomed to high-pressure situations where maintaining composure was essential for mission success. As Davidson prepared to resolve the confrontation with what appeared to be routine enforcement of Mitchell's safety assessment, his radio crackled with a transmission from the main range control office. Colonel Davidson, we have a priority message from Fort Carson Command requesting immediate verification of a civilian shooter identified as S. Reynolds. Please confirm identity and provide status report immediately. The unexpected communication caused Davidson to pause mid-sentence, his expression shifting from routine problem-solving to sharp professional attention. Priority messages from Fort Carson typically involve security issues or personnel matters requiring immediate command attention. Davidson keyed his radio to acknowledge the transmission while studying Samantha's face with renewed intensity. Range control, this is Davidson. Confirm spelling of surname and provide additional identifying information for verification purposes. The response came immediately. Surname Reynolds, Reynolds. First name Samantha. DoD Personnel Database shows restricted access file requiring kernel-level authorization for detailed information. Fort Carson Command specifically requests confirmation of current location and activity status. The mention of restricted access files and kernel-level authorization requirements transformed the entire dynamic of the situation in an instant. Davidson's military experience had taught him that such security protocols were typically associated with classified operations, special operations personnel, or individuals whose backgrounds required protection for national security reasons. Civilian medical records clerks, regardless of their recreational shooting interests, did not generate priority communications from major military installations or require restricted database access for basic identification verification. Master Sergeant Williams recognized the implications immediately and moved closer to Davidson for a whispered consultation. Sir, restricted access files typically indicate former special operations personnel or individuals with classified backgrounds requiring protection. If Fort Carson Command is tracking her location and requesting status reports, we may be dealing with someone whose actual background differs significantly from her apparent civilian employment. Davidson nodded grimly, understanding that his routine range safety issue had suddenly become a potential security matter requiring careful handling. Mitchell, still gripping Samantha's rifle and awaiting Davidson's confirmation of his safety assessment, remained unaware of the radio communications that were reshaping the situation around him. His military training had taught him to wait for orders from superior officers, but his growing impatience was evident as Davidson appeared to be focusing on administrative matters rather than the immediate safety violation requiring resolution. "Sir," Mitchell said respectfully, "I recommend we relocate this civilian to an appropriate training area and document this incident for future reference to prevent similar safety violations." Davidson's response came not as the expected confirmation of Mitchell's assessment, but as a direct question that cut through all assumptions about the situation's nature. "Ms. Reynolds," he said formally, addressing Samantha directly for the first time, "Fort Carson Command is requesting verification of your identity and current activity status. Are you the Samantha Reynolds whose personnel file requires kernel-level authorization to access?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence, transforming casual weekend recreation into something that clearly involved classified information and military protocols that extended far beyond routine range safety management. Samantha looked directly into Davidson's eyes for exactly 3 seconds before responding with words that would fundamentally alter everyone's understanding of who she was and why her presence at Thunder Ridge represented something extraordinary rather than a simple civilian safety issue. "Colonel Davidson," she said quietly, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone addressing a fellow military professional, "my personnel classification is Restricted Access Level 7. Current designation is Inactive Reserve Status, pending completion of mandatory psychological evaluation protocols. Service record sealed under National Security Provisions, Section 2847. The words Restricted Access Level 7 hit Colonel Davidson like a physical blow, causing him to involuntarily step backward as the full implications of Samantha's response registered in his mind. In 23 years of military service, Davidson had encountered Level 7 classifications fewer than a dozen times, and every instance had involved personnel whose capabilities and operational histories were so sensitive that knowledge of their existence was compartmentalized to the highest levels of military command. Level 7 wasn't simply classified. It was a designation reserved for individuals whose skills, missions, or knowledge represented potential national security assets, requiring protection through absolute anonymity. Master Sergeant Williams felt his training and experience converging into a moment of perfect clarity as Samantha's military bearing became suddenly, undeniably evident. Her posture shifted subtly but unmistakably from civilian casualness to the relaxed attention stance that special operations personnel maintained even during off-duty activities. Her voice carried the flat, controlled delivery that Williams recognized from briefings with Delta Force operators and other elite units whose members learned to communicate critical information without emotional inflection. Most significantly, her eyes displayed the 1,000-yard stare that came from extended deployments in combat zones where constant vigilance meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison immediately activated his secure communication device to establish direct contact with Fort Carson Command, understanding that civilian range activities had just become a matter requiring coordination with military intelligence and security protocols. His years of experience managing classified personnel issues had taught him that Level 7 designations typically involved individuals whose operational backgrounds included activities that could never be acknowledged publicly. The presence of such a person at a civilian shooting range represented either a serious security breach or an operational activity that required immediate clarification from higher command authority. The crowd of civilian spectators still focused on what they perceived as a routine range safety dispute remained completely unaware that the morning's entertainment had suddenly become a classified military matter involving personnel and protocols that exceeded their security clearance levels. Dr. Hartwell continued recording video on his cell phone, not understanding that he was documenting interactions with someone whose identity and capabilities were protected by federal security regulations. The local police officers and weekend recreational shooters maintained their positions as interested observers, unaware that they were witnessing the emergence of an individual whose existence was supposed to remain invisible to public scrutiny. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez and Lance Corporal Thompson, however, recognized the transformation immediately and moved to positions that would allow them to provide security support if the situation required military intervention. Their combat experience had taught them to identify moments when routine activities became operational matters requiring enhanced vigilance and readiness for rapid response. Rodriguez activated his military communication device to alert Camp Pendleton security personnel about potential developments requiring Marine Corps coordination with Army command structures. Mitchell, still gripping Samantha's rifle and increasingly confused by the unexpected focus on administrative matters rather than immediate safety concerns, found himself caught between his determination to enforce range protocols and his growing awareness that the situation had evolved beyond his understanding or authority. His 15 years of military service had never exposed him to personnel classifications requiring colonel-level authorization, and he had no framework for processing information about restricted access files or sealed service records. His training told him to maintain his position and await orders from superior officers, but his instincts were warning him that he had stumbled into something far more complex than routine range safety management. Davidson's radio crackled with an immediate response from Fort Carson Command that confirmed his worst fears about the situation's complexity. Colonel Davidson, you are instructed to maintain operational security protocols and limit information access to personnel with appropriate clearance levels. Subject's current status is authorized recreational activity under cover identity maintenance requirements. No interference with subject's activities is permitted without direct authorization from General Morrison's office. The message made clear that Samantha's presence at Thunder Ridge wasn't a security violation, but rather an authorized activity that Davidson's personnel were required to support rather than obstruct. The implications of cover identity maintenance requirements sent chills through Davidson's professional understanding of military security protocols. Such designations typically applied to deep cover operatives, special operations personnel transitioning between assignments, or individuals whose public identities served as protection for classified activities that could not be acknowledged through normal military channels. Samantha wasn't simply a former military member enjoying recreational shooting. She was an active asset whose civilian employment and lifestyle represented an operational necessity rather than personal choice. Williams approached Davidson for a whispered consultation, his voice barely audible above the ambient noise from adjacent shooting ranges. "Sir, if she's maintaining cover identity for operational reasons, then our interference with her recreational activities could potentially compromise whatever mission requirements are keeping her in civilian status. We may have inadvertently created a security incident by allowing this confrontation to escalate in front of witnesses with recording equipment." Davidson nodded grimly, understanding that what had started as routine range safety management had become a delicate matter of operational security, requiring immediate damage control. The technical sophistication of Samantha's equipment setup now made perfect sense within the context of her restricted classification status. Her custom rifle configuration represented government-funded precision shooting capabilities, maintained for potential operational deployment, rather than expensive recreational equipment purchased by a wealthy civilian. The advanced ballistic calculations and extreme distance ammunition selection indicated ongoing proficiency maintenance in skills that might be required for future missions rather than hobby shooting activities. Everything that had seemed inconsistent about her civilian appearance and military-grade capabilities was suddenly explained by the revelation that her public identity was itself a carefully constructed operational asset. Harrison's secure communication with Fort Carson Command provided additional context that further complicated the situation. Colonel Davidson, subjects' psychological evaluation protocols are related to transition counseling following completion of classified operations in multiple theaters. Her civilian employment and recreational activities are part of prescribed reintegration therapy designed to maintain operational readiness while providing psychological support for extended deep cover assignments. Any disruption of her established routines could interfere with ongoing medical treatment and operational preparedness requirements. The crowd of civilian observers, still unaware of the classified nature of the communications occurring around them, was beginning to sense that the confrontation had evolved beyond simple range safety enforcement. The arrival of additional military personnel, the intense radio communications, and the serious expressions on the faces of senior officers suggested that routine weekend recreation had become something requiring official attention and careful management. Cell phone recordings continued, but several spectators began moving toward exits as their instincts warned them that they might be witnessing events that were not intended for public observation. Davidson faced a complex decision requiring him to balance operational security requirements against civilian safety protocols while managing a crowd of witnesses whose presence complicated every aspect of the situation. His next actions would determine whether the morning's events remained a minor incident involving mistaken assumptions about civilian capabilities or escalated into a security matter, requiring investigation and potential consequences for multiple personnel whose only mistake had been enforcing standard safety procedures without understanding the true nature of the individual they were attempting to regulate. Davidson's decision to request a private briefing fundamentally altered the trajectory of the morning's events, transforming public confrontation into classified consultation that would reveal the extraordinary circumstances that had led Samantha Reynolds to seek anonymity in civilian life. As the crowd of spectators was diplomatically relocated to adjacent ranges under the supervision of Master Sergeant Williams, Davidson escorted Samantha to the secure briefing facility located in Thunder Ridge's administrative complex. The small conference room, equipped with electronic countermeasures and sound dampening systems, provided an environment where classified information could be discussed without compromising operational security or endangering ongoing missions. Samantha's transformation from defensive civilian to military professional became complete the moment the briefing room door closed behind them. Her posture straightened into the precise bearing that indicated years of special operations training, while her voice adopted the clinical precision that characterized personnel accustomed to delivering critical information under extreme pressure. "Colonel Davidson," she began formally, "my current assignment requires maintenance of civilian cover identity for medical and operational security reasons. What occurred this morning represents an unplanned exposure incident that may require damage control measures depending on your assessment of security implications." The service record that Davidson accessed through his colonel-level authorization revealed a career trajectory that explained both Samantha's extraordinary capabilities and her current need for anonymity. Captain Samantha Reynolds, United States Army Special Operations Command, had completed 8 years of active duty, including deployments to Afghanistan, Syria, and 3 other locations that remained classified even at Davidson's clearance level. Her military occupational specialty was listed as 18Z, Special Forces Operations Sergeant, but her actual role had been precision marksmanship instructor and counter-sniper specialist attached to units conducting deep reconnaissance and direct action missions against high-value targets. Her official commendations included 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, a Silver Star, and 3 Distinguished Service Crosses, decorations that indicated exceptional performance under combat conditions that tested the limits of human endurance and capability. More significantly, her personnel file contained recommendations for the Congressional Medal of Honor that had been classified indefinitely due to the sensitive nature of the operations they described. The missions that had earned these recommendations remained sealed under national security provisions that prohibited their disclosure even to senior military officers without specific operational need-to-know authorization. The psychological evaluation protocols mentioned in her current status designation stemmed from her final deployment, designated Operation Silent Thunder, where her reconnaissance team had been tasked with eliminating a network of enemy snipers who were systematically targeting coalition forces throughout a strategic region of eastern Afghanistan. The mission had required her team to operate independently for 6 months, living among hostile populations while identifying and neutralizing threats that conventional forces could not locate or engage effectively. The operation had been successful beyond all expectations, eliminating 43 enemy combatants and saving an estimated 200 coalition lives. But the psychological cost of extended isolation and constant mortal danger had exceeded even special operations psychological tolerance standards. The breaking point had come during the final phase of Operation Silent Thunder, when Samantha's team was betrayed by local informants and surrounded by superior enemy forces in mountainous terrain that offered no possibility of extraction or reinforcement. The engagement lasted 14 hours, during which Samantha's precision marksmanship skills kept her team alive against overwhelming odds while directing close air support and coordinating with rescue forces. By the time extraction was achieved, she was the sole survivor of a 5-person team that had become legendary within special operations circles for their effectiveness and courage under impossible conditions. The survivor's guilt and post-traumatic stress resulting from losing her entire team had created psychological symptoms that military medical professionals determined required extended treatment away from operational environments. Her transition to civilian life wasn't voluntary retirement, but rather prescribed therapy designed to help her process trauma while maintaining the skills and readiness that made her a valuable national security asset. The medical records indicated that her shooting activities at Thunder Ridge represented both recreational stress relief and prescribed therapy for maintaining operational capabilities during her recovery period. Davidson's review of classified after-action reports from Operation Silent Thunder provided additional context that explained Samantha's current situation and the extraordinary precautions surrounding her civilian identity. The enemy sniper network she had eliminated had included several foreign nationals whose deaths had triggered international incidents requiring careful diplomatic management. Her role in these operations needed to remain classified indefinitely to prevent potential retaliation against her or her family members, while also protecting intelligence sources and methods that remained active in ongoing counterterrorism efforts. The precision marksmanship records contained within her personnel file revealed capabilities that exceeded anything Davidson had encountered during his extensive military career. Her documented longest confirmed kill shot was 2,247 yards, the base record that Range Master Colonel Davidson had mentioned during the confrontation, achieved during a mission that saved an entire platoon from enemy fire. Her accuracy statistics indicated success rates that challenged the theoretical limits of human marksmanship capability, with confirmed hits at distances exceeding 2,000 yards achieved under combat conditions that included wind, weather, and enemy countermeasures designed to prevent exactly the kind of precision shooting she consistently delivered. The medical evaluation reports described her current psychological state as stable but requiring continued monitoring for symptoms related to survivors' guilt and hypervigilance behaviors that were common among special operations veterans transitioning to civilian life. Her work as a medical records clerk had been specifically chosen to provide meaningful employment while avoiding high-stress environments that might trigger psychological symptoms requiring emergency intervention. Her recreational shooting activities served dual purposes, maintaining operational readiness for potential future missions, while providing therapeutic benefits that helped process trauma through controlled, positive experiences with precision marksmanship. The revelation that her civilian identity was itself a classified operation rather than simple personal choice fundamentally altered Davidson's understanding of the morning's events and their potential implications. Staff Sergeant Mitchell's well-intentioned enforcement of safety protocols had inadvertently interfered with ongoing medical treatment and operational security measures that were essential for maintaining a valuable national security asset. The presence of witnesses and recording equipment complicated the situation further, creating potential exposure risks that might require coordination with intelligence agencies responsible for protecting classified personnel identities. As Davidson absorbed the full scope of Samantha's background and current status, he began developing a response strategy that would protect her operational security while addressing the legitimate concerns that had triggered the morning's confrontation. The challenge was managing civilian expectations and military protocols while ensuring that a genuine American hero could continue her recovery process without compromising the anonymity that protected both her personal safety and ongoing national security interests. With the classified briefing complete and Samantha's extraordinary background now fully understood, Colonel Davidson faced the delicate challenge of resolving the public confrontation while protecting operational security requirements that prohibited revealing her true identity or capabilities. The solution required careful orchestration that would demonstrate her marksmanship abilities sufficiently to end speculation and restore her civilian cover without exposing classified information or compromising ongoing security protocols. Davidson's years of experience managing sensitive military operations provided the framework for a controlled demonstration that would satisfy civilian curiosity while maintaining the anonymity essential for Samantha's continued recovery and potential future deployment. The return to the precision shooting range was carefully choreographed to appear routine while implementing security measures that protected classified information from unauthorized disclosure. Master Sergeant Williams had positioned additional range safety personnel at strategic locations to monitor the demonstration and ensure that civilian observers maintained appropriate distances from sensitive equipment and communications. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison established a secure perimeter around Position 7, ostensibly for safety reasons, but actually to prevent unauthorized access to Samantha's ballistic calculation cards and other technical materials that might reveal operational capabilities exceeding civilian recreational shooting standards. Staff Sergeant Mitchell, still struggling to process the morning's revelations and his role in creating an incident involving classified personnel, was assigned to assist with range safety protocols while being carefully briefed on information security requirements that prohibited discussion of administrative matters unrelated to immediate shooting activities. His embarrassment at having challenged someone whose qualifications exceeded his own was evident, but his professional military training enabled him to focus on supporting the demonstration rather than dwelling on personal mistakes that had been made without malicious intent or knowledge of the true circumstances involved. The assembled crowd of civilian spectators had grown considerably during the administrative delay, with word spreading throughout Thunder Ridge that something extraordinary was developing at the precision shooting range. Dr. Hartwell maintained his position as senior civilian observer, his competitive shooting background providing credibility that helped manage expectations and maintain order among the gathered spectators. The two Marines from Camp Pendleton positioned themselves where they could observe both the demonstration and the crowd, their combat experience alerting them to potential security concerns that might arise from public exposure of capabilities that clearly exceeded normal civilian recreational shooting standards. Samantha's preparation for the demonstration shot followed protocols that balanced operational security requirements against the need to provide convincing evidence of her qualifications without revealing the full extent of her capabilities. Her target selection was carefully coordinated with Davidson to ensure maximum impact, while remaining within parameters that could be attributed to exceptional civilian marksmanship rather than military-grade precision shooting that might raise questions about her background and training. The chosen distance of 1,847 yards represented a compromise between demonstrating extraordinary skill and avoiding the record-setting 2,847-yard shots that were documented in her classified personnel files. Weather conditions that morning provided additional challenges that would make the demonstration even more impressive to knowledgeable observers while creating natural explanations for the extraordinary precision that civilian spectators were about to witness. Wind speeds remained variable between 12 and 18 miles per hour, with gusts reaching 25 miles per hour that would challenge even experienced military snipers. Temperature gradients between the shooting position and target area continued creating mirage effects that required sophisticated understanding of atmospheric ballistics to compensate accurately. Barometric pressure changes ahead of the approaching weather front affected projectile trajectory in ways that demanded real-time calculations based on advanced ballistics training. The technical setup for Samantha's demonstration shot showcased equipment capabilities that supported her cover story while avoiding exposure of classified modifications or specialized ammunition that might indicate government-funded precision shooting systems. Her custom rifle configuration was impressive enough to explain exceptional accuracy without revealing the full extent of optimizations that had been developed for specific operational requirements. The ammunition she selected represented the highest quality civilian available cartridges, providing excellent performance while avoiding military specification rounds that might raise questions about procurement sources and funding. As Samantha settled into her shooting position with the fluid efficiency that characterized her operational training, the assembled crowd fell silent in recognition that they were about to witness something exceptional. Her breathing pattern automatically adjusted to the controlled rhythm that special operations snipers learned for managing physiological factors that affected long-range accuracy. Her body positioning optimized stability and comfort for extended precision shooting sessions, while her scope adjustments incorporated atmospheric corrections that demonstrated familiarity with ballistics calculations typically known only to military professionals and world-class competitive marksmen. The moment of the shot itself was anticlimactic in its technical execution, but extraordinary in its results. Samantha's trigger control was flawless, with the rifle firing at the precise instant when atmospheric and physiological conditions aligned for optimal accuracy. The massive .338 Lapua Magnum cartridge launched its 250-grain match bullet downrange with a muzzle velocity exceeding 2,900 feet per second, beginning a ballistic trajectory that would require nearly 4 seconds of flight time to reach the target at 1,047 yards distance. The assembled crowd watched through spotting scopes and binoculars as the bullet traced its arc across the Colorado landscape, defying wind and gravity through precision calculations that seemed almost supernatural in their accuracy. The impact was confirmed immediately by range personnel monitoring the target area through high-powered optics, but the full significance of the achievement required several minutes for civilian observers to process completely. The bullet had struck dead center of the target, achieving accuracy that exceeded the mechanical precision of most civilian rifles and demonstrated marksmanship capabilities that challenged the theoretical limits of human performance under field conditions. Dr. Hartwell, despite his extensive competitive shooting experience, found himself speechless as he calculated the technical difficulty of what he had just witnessed under prevailing atmospheric conditions. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez and Lance Corporal Thompson exchanged glances that conveyed their professional recognition of capabilities that exceeded anything they had encountered during their military careers. Their combat experience provided context for appreciating the extraordinary skill demonstrated by the shot, understanding that achieving such precision under field conditions required training and experience that went far beyond civilian recreational shooting or even standard military marksmanship programs. The demonstration had confirmed their earlier suspicions that Samantha Reynolds was someone whose capabilities placed her in an entirely different category from ordinary marksmen. The crowd's reaction evolved from stunned silence to amazed applause as the implications of the shot became clear to observers with sufficient technical knowledge to appreciate its difficulty. Cell phone cameras that had been recording throughout the demonstration captured not only the shot itself, but also the reactions of experienced shooters who understood they had witnessed something that would become legendary within precision marksmanship circles. The morning that had started with routine recreational shooting had become a demonstration of human capability that would be discussed and analyzed by shooting enthusiasts for years to come. The immediate aftermath of Samantha's demonstration shot created a profound transformation in the atmosphere at Thunder Ridge that extended far beyond the assembled crowd of witnesses to encompass the entire facility and its operational procedures. Within minutes of the confirmed hit at 147 yards, word began spreading through the base communication networks as range personnel shared details of the extraordinary marksmanship display with colleagues at adjacent facilities. The technical difficulty of the shot, achieved under challenging atmospheric conditions by someone initially dismissed as an unqualified civilian, represented the kind of performance that redefined expectations and challenged fundamental assumptions about human capabilities under pressure. Staff Sergeant Mitchell's personal transformation was perhaps the most dramatic and immediate consequence of witnessing Samantha's capabilities in action. The man who had spent 20 minutes publicly questioning her qualifications and physically preventing her from accessing her equipment now stood in stunned silence, his face cycling through expressions of embarrassment, amazement, and profound professional respect. His military training provided sufficient technical knowledge to understand exactly how extraordinary the shot had been, while his personal integrity demanded acknowledgement of his mistake in judging someone based on appearance rather than demonstrated capabilities. His apology, delivered quietly but witnessed by several observers, represented a moment of genuine humility that elevated the entire situation above simple vindication into something approaching reconciliation. Dr. Hartwell, whose competitive shooting background provided the most relevant civilian expertise for evaluating Samantha's performance, found himself fundamentally reconsidering his understanding of precision marksmanship possibilities under field conditions. His years of competition had exposed him to world-class shooters and record-setting performances, but witnessing such extraordinary accuracy, achieved casually during what amounted to an impromptu demonstration, challenged his assumptions about the limits of human marksmanship capability. His subsequent conversations with other competitive shooters would spread awareness of Samantha's abilities throughout civilian precision shooting communities, though always within the context of recreational achievement rather than military background. The two Marines from Camp Pendleton, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez and Lance Corporal Thompson, recognized that they had witnessed capabilities that exceeded anything in their combat experience and immediately understood the operational implications of such extraordinary marksmanship skills. Their professional assessment of Samantha's performance would be included in informal communications with Marine Corps sniper training programs, contributing to ongoing discussions about human performance limits and training methodologies that could develop similar capabilities in future precision marksmen. Their respect for her abilities was evident in their subsequent interactions, which carried the quiet deference that combat veterans showed to individuals whose skills surpassed their own. Colonel Davidson's challenge following the demonstration was managing the expanded attention that Samantha's performance had generated while maintaining the operational security requirements that protected her classified status and ongoing recovery process. The presence of multiple recording devices and the inevitable spread of video documentation through social media networks created potential exposure risks that required careful monitoring and possible intervention if her civilian identity became compromised. His coordination with Fort Carson Command intensified as military intelligence personnel assessed the security implications of public documentation showing classified personnel demonstrating capabilities that might attract unwanted attention from hostile intelligence services. Master Sergeant Williams implemented enhanced security protocols for future civilian shooting activities at Thunder Ridge, recognizing that the morning's events had created precedents requiring careful management to prevent similar exposure incidents. His recommendations included improved background screening procedures for civilian shooters attempting extreme distance shots, enhanced coordination with military personnel offices for identifying individuals whose participation might involve security considerations, and modified range safety protocols that balanced civilian access against operational security requirements for protecting classified personnel who might be using the facilities for authorized recreational activities. The civilian shooting. Community's reaction to video recordings of Samantha's demonstration created ripple effects that extended throughout regional and national precision shooting organizations. Online forums dedicated to long-range marksmanship began analyzing technical aspects of the shot, discussing equipment specifications, and speculating about the training and experience required to achieve such accuracy under field conditions. While these discussions remained focused on civilian recreational shooting rather than military applications, the level of interest and technical analysis created additional exposure risks that required ongoing monitoring by security personnel responsible for protecting Samantha's cover identity. Thunder Ridge's operational procedures underwent significant modifications in response to the morning's events, with new protocols established for managing situations involving personnel whose backgrounds might include classified elements requiring protection. Range Master Davidson developed enhanced coordination procedures with regional military commands to ensure that future incidents involving potential security considerations would be handled with appropriate discretion and expertise. These changes reflected lessons learned about the challenges of maintaining operational security in environments where classified and civilian personnel interacted during recreational activities. The psychological impact on Samantha herself was carefully monitored by medical personnel responsible for overseeing her transition therapy and recovery process. The public demonstration of her capabilities, while necessary for resolving the immediate security situation, represented a significant departure from the anonymity that had characterized her civilian life and protected her ongoing treatment for post-traumatic stress related to combat experiences. Psychological evaluation sessions were increased to assess potential effects of renewed attention and ensure that her recovery process remained on track despite the unplanned exposure incident. Local media coverage of the extraordinary marksmanship demonstration was carefully managed through coordination between military public affairs personnel and civilian news organizations, ensuring that reporting focused on exceptional civilian achievement rather than military background or classified capabilities. The story that emerged in regional newspapers and television broadcasts emphasized recreational shooting excellence and highlighted Thunder Ridge's role in providing world-class facilities for civilian marksmen, while avoiding any references to military service records or operational backgrounds that might compromise security requirements. The long-term implications of the morning's events extended beyond immediate security and operational concerns to influence policies and procedures throughout military organizations responsible for managing personnel transitions from classified assignments to civilian life. Samantha's case became a reference point for developing improved protocols that balanced the therapeutic benefits of maintaining familiar activities during recovery periods against the security risks created by potential exposure of classified capabilities in civilian environments. Staff Sergeant Mitchell's subsequent professional development included enhanced training in personnel security awareness and civilian interaction protocols, ensuring that his experience contributed to improved understanding of the complexities involved in managing facilities where classified and civilian personnel might interact during recreational activities. His personal growth from the incident reflected the broader learning opportunities that emerged from what had initially appeared to be a routine range safety issue, but had evolved into a complex demonstration of human capability, professional respect, and the importance of avoiding assumptions based on superficial appearances. 6 months after the extraordinary demonstration at Thunder Ridge Military Base, the ripple effects of that morning continued to influence lives, policies, and perspectives throughout military and civilian communities in ways that validated the profound impact of recognizing hidden excellence within ordinary circumstances. Samantha Reynolds had returned to her position as medical records clerk at Pine Valley General Hospital, maintaining the same quiet professionalism and unassuming demeanor that had characterized her civilian identity for years. But the knowledge of her true capabilities had subtly transformed how colleagues and patients interacted with her presence. The woman who processed insurance paperwork and organized patient files carried herself with the same gentle efficiency, yet those who knew her story found themselves drawn to her calm competence during hospital emergencies and crisis situations. The hospital's emergency response protocols had been quietly enhanced through Samantha's informal consultation on stress management and crisis decision-making, though her contributions remained unofficial and unrecognized in formal documentation. During medical emergencies, when staff members struggled with high-pressure situations, they often found themselves observing how Samantha moved through chaotic environments with systematic precision, maintaining focus and effectiveness when others became overwhelmed by competing demands and time pressures. Her influence on hospital culture was subtle but profound, demonstrating that leadership and expertise could be exercised through example and availability rather than formal authority or public recognition. Thunder Ridge Military Base had become an unexpected pilgrimage site for precision shooting enthusiasts from across the nation, with civilian marksmen specifically requesting access to the range where the legendary 1,847-yard demonstration had occurred. Colonel Davidson had established new educational programs that used the morning's events as a case study in challenging assumptions and recognizing excellence regardless of its packaging or presentation. Young officers attended seminars on personnel assessment and leadership judgment, learning that extraordinary capabilities often remained hidden within ordinary circumstances until crisis or opportunity revealed them to careful observers. Staff Sergeant Mitchell's personal transformation had evolved into a broader commitment to mentoring and education that made him one of Thunder Ridge's most effective instructors for civilian-military interaction protocols. His experience of misjudging someone so dramatically had provided profound insights into the dangers of assumptions based on appearance, background, or social expectations rather than demonstrated capabilities and actual performance. His training sessions for military personnel emphasized the importance of respectful assessment and professional courtesy when working with civilian populations that might include individuals whose backgrounds exceeded obvious indicators of their expertise or experience. The precision shooting community had elevated Samantha's demonstration to legendary status, with technical analyses of her shot appearing in specialized publications and training materials used by competitive marksmen throughout the world. While her military background remained classified and protected, her achievement had inspired thousands of recreational shooters to pursue higher levels of excellence and challenge their own assumptions about human potential under difficult conditions. Shooting instructors regularly referenced her performance when teaching students about the importance of mental preparation, technical precision, and maintaining focus under pressure from skeptical observers and challenging atmospheric conditions. Dr. Hartwell had established a scholarship program at his local university that supported students pursuing careers in precision engineering and advanced mathematics, inspired by his recognition that extraordinary technical achievements required educational foundations that many talented individuals lacked access to through traditional academic pathways. His experience of witnessing capabilities that exceeded his understanding had motivated him to ensure that future generations would have opportunities to develop their potential regardless of economic circumstances or social background. The scholarship recipients learned about the importance of recognizing excellence in unexpected places and supporting individuals whose talents might otherwise remain undiscovered. Military training programs throughout the Department of Defense had incorporated lessons from the Thunder Ridge incident into curricula addressing personnel security, civilian interaction, and the identification of exceptional capabilities within diverse populations. Advanced sniper training courses used Samantha's documented performance as an example of human marksmanship potential, while leadership development programs emphasized the importance of creating environments where hidden expertise could be recognized and utilized effectively. Her case became a reference point for discussions about talent recognition, professional respect, and the value of maintaining operational readiness through diverse pathways and unconventional circumstances. The psychological treatment protocols developed for special operations veterans transitioning to civilian life had been enhanced based on insights gained from Samantha's successful integration of therapeutic recreational activities with operational readiness maintenance. Medical professionals working with combat veterans recognized that maintaining familiar skills and capabilities during recovery periods could provide psychological benefits while preserving valuable national security assets for potential future deployment. Her example demonstrated that effective therapy could support both personal healing and continued service to national interests through carefully managed programs that protected individual privacy while maintaining institutional knowledge and capabilities. Regional law enforcement agencies had quietly recruited several military veterans for specialized training programs after learning about the extraordinary expertise that existed within their communities, but remained largely invisible due to career transitions and personal choices about public visibility. Police departments and federal agencies developed enhanced protocols for identifying and utilizing exceptional capabilities among personnel whose backgrounds might include training and experience that could benefit civilian law enforcement missions. These programs respected individual privacy while creating opportunities for continued service in roles that matched personal preferences and psychological needs. The broader cultural impact of Samantha's story resonated throughout communities where military veterans had chosen civilian careers that utilized only small portions of their actual capabilities and training. Employers in healthcare, education, and public service began recognizing that their workforce might include individuals whose backgrounds provided extraordinary value during crisis situations and challenging operational circumstances. This awareness led to enhanced emergency response capabilities and improved organizational resilience through better understanding and utilization of hidden expertise within existing personnel structures. For Samantha herself, the morning at Thunder Ridge had represented not an end to anonymity, but rather a validation that her choice to serve through quiet excellence was both recognized and respected by those whose opinions mattered most to her continued recovery and personal fulfillment. She continued her work at Pine Valley General Hospital with renewed confidence that her service remained valuable and meaningful, whether delivered through classified military operations or civilian healthcare support. Her daily routine maintained the same patterns that supported her psychological healing while providing opportunities to contribute positively to her community through skills and knowledge that required no public recognition to remain effective and important. The legacy of her demonstration had become a testament to the thousands of hidden heroes who chose service over recognition, substance over publicity, and quiet excellence over public acclaim, proving that extraordinary capabilities often walked among ordinary people, waiting for moments when their gifts could serve others regardless of whether anyone would remember their names or understand the full scope of what they had accomplished in defense of others' safety and freedom. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.